So here is a short video review or resume of section 10.1 in the IGCSE Biology, and I'm going to be talking about pathogens and transmission of diseases. Pathogen are the organisms that can make us sick or can make other animals or the plants sick. And we have four major classes of them: virus, bacteria, protists, and fungi. Virus are these small packages of protein and RNA, DNA who go in and infect our cells and cause them to reproduce their own RNA, DNA. So they're not really alive, they go in and hijack cells, but when they do that we can get quite sick. It can be anything from like a sore throat and the flu up to stuff like COVID or HIV. Bacteria are small single-cell organisms. They have a cell wall, they have DNA, they're alive and they can multiply very quickly. Many of them are quite harmless. Many of them actually live inside us and are part of a symbiotic relationship. But some of them, if we get the wrong bacteria in the wrong places, they can make us sick. This can be anything from a wound infection, where you get boils or infected wound, to serious stuff like cholera, which is a bacteria that infects us in our stomach. Protists are a group of stuff that can live inside us as parasites. Malaria is a parasite that lives inside our blood cells and bursts them, and it's transferred by mosquitoes, but more about that later. And last but not least, we have the fungi, yeast infections, athlete's foot, usually stuff that infects our skin. So, a few words here. When we talk about the pathogen which causes a disease to the host. So in this case here, we have a viral infection that has affected the cells here in the throat. That leads to some toxins being released, and it also leads to our immune system being activated. That causes symptoms. That could be fever. You might have pain here in the throat, and there might be coughing here. And by coughing and sneezing, when we have like a viral throat infection, we will help transmit the disease, because the viral particles will then go flying out and infect, well, maybe someone else. So this here is what we call a transmissible disease. There are many diseases who are not contagious, stuff like most cases of cancer, heart disease, diabetes. These are also diseases, but they are not transmissible. But flu, cholera, so on are all transmissible diseases. And transmission can be in direct contact or in indirect contact. Direct contact are all the sexual transmitted diseases, for obvious reasons. Also, any diseases where you share blood, saliva, spit, or stuff like athlete's foot, where you share a towel, share a bathroom, or scabies, where the small parasites, they go from one person to another if you live really close together. So direct contact is easy to limit. If you know someone's sick, you're not touching them. Indirect transmission is different, and there are many ways a disease can be transmitted indirect, but it's usually either airborne, waterborne, or borne by animal vectors. Airborne is, for example, I cough and particles filled with vira will fly out in the room, and they might linger there for some time and then go and infect someone else. That could be COVID. Waterborne is pathogens who can live in the water. Cholera is well known here. So if I, for example, have some pathogens on my hand and I don't wash them properly, I can transmit to someone else. If I then go and put my hands in some water and someone else drinks that water. And then we have animal vectors. It's not mentioned a lot in the book, but it's quite important that stuff like mosquitoes and flies can transmit diseases. For example, malaria is transmitted by a mosquito. Other diseases are transmitted by flies. So quite a few diseases have animal vectors spreading them. So how do our body then defend ourselves? Well, we have the immune system, but that's another thing. But first of all, we have our natural barriers to defend ourselves. And the first and most important one is our skin. That's the reason why if you get a wound somewhere on your skin, you want to disinfect it, wash it with soap. Because our skin is the first line of defense against bacteria, virus, and so on. Our second layer of defense we find in the eyes, for example. We have enzymes there that helps break down virus, helps stop stuff. In our nose, we have hairs that help to trap dust particles and other stuff before it gets to our lungs. In our lungs here, we have mucus that will help trap particles so we can cough them up before they get into contact with the lung tissue. And in our stomach here, we have hydrochloric acid, which will kill many pathogens. Also help us protect us against diseases getting transmitted in that way. So our body has many layers of defense, stopping bacteria, virus, and so on, from even getting into contact with us. How do we then prevent transmissible diseases? Well, actually, this is one of the major revolutions in human science, is when we started to understand how diseases actually spread. And we know now that what's really important is clean water, food hygiene, personal hygiene, and waste disposal. And I'll go over them in a little more detail. So for preventing disease to spread, we need four things. We need clean water supply. Dirty water is an important vector for many kind of diseases. We need food hygiene, food that can be stored safely. If it's not stored safely, bacteria can start growing on it. We need personal hygiene, being able to wash your hands, brush your teeth, wash any wound you might have. And we need waste disposal, the ability to get rid of our sewage and our waste in a way so it won't be lying around and be a host for bacteria and virus and so on. So all this is very important for human health. This is also why this is very important in any disaster area, because if we have an earthquake, if we have a hurricane, anything hit, what usually kills more people than the disaster itself are these things. As water supply breaks down, as there's no electricity, so we can't cool the food, there's not soap, water available for washing yourself, and waste will be lying around in the streets rotting. We often see that more people end up dying from transmissible diseases than end up dying from the disaster itself. So if you work with disaster management planning, it's very important that these things here are some of the first things you do when you get to disaster area. You get people clean water, safe food, you give them soap and a toilet. That's a very, very easy way to save a lot of lives. Thank you for staying with me. One of the major